Hello, my dear friends. Today I've gathered for you 3 of the most terrifying stories of 911 emergency calls. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps my channel grow further. Enjoy watching.
The first thing I heard wasn't a scream or a crash. It was the soft, rhythmic creak of the 3rd step from the top of the stairs, the one with the loose board, the one you learn to avoid when you're trying to sneak in after curfew, or when you're getting a glass of water in the dead of night. I heard it from my bed in the dark, and my entire body went cold because I live alone. I have lived alone since Sarah left, taking the dog and the good coffee mugs and every last shred of noise with her. I didn't move. I just lay there, listening to the silence that followed. It was a thick, listening silence. My heart was a frantic animal in my chest. You imagined it, I told myself. The house settling, the wind, but the windows were shut, the night outside utterly still. I counted to 100, the numbers jumbling in my head. Nothing. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Then, from directly downstairs came the clear, crisp ting of a spoon being placed gently in a ceramic bowl. The sound was obscenely domestic. It was followed by the soft scrape of a chair leg on the kitchen tile. Someone was in my kitchen. Someone was having a snack. My hand crept to the nightstand, fingers closing around my phone. The glow of the screen was a blasphemous beacon in the dark room. I dialed 911 with trembling thumbs, brought the phone to my ear. The ringing was too loud. I pressed it hard against my head, smothering the sound. 911, what's your emergency? A woman's voice, calm, bored. I'm in the upstairs bedroom. I heard them. They're in the kitchen. Okay, sir, I need you to stay calm. What's your address? I gave it to her, my voice a reedy thread of sound. She told me units were on the way, to stay quiet, to stay hidden. Is there any way you can secure the bedroom door? She asked. I looked at the door. It was ajar. I'd never closed it, a habit from when the dog would wander in and out at night. The hallway beyond was a pool of absolute black. No, I breathed. It's open. Then don't move. Don't make a sound. Help is coming. We stayed on the line. I could hear her typing. I could hear my own blood roaring in my ears. And then I heard the footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs, not trying to be quiet anymore. Creak, pause, creak, pause. They reached the landing. The floorboards in the hall whispered under a shifting weight. The dispatch's voice was in my ear, a tiny digital lifeline. Sir, are you still there? I couldn't speak. A shadow fell across the sliver of light from the street lamp that always seeped under my bedroom door. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there, a tall, man-shaped blot of darkness listening. I could feel a gaze, a palpable pressure seeping through the wood. Then, a smell. It cut through the adrenaline, coppery, sweet, and cloying. The smell of raw meat left out in the sun. It made my gorge rise. The shadow moved. It passed my door. I heard the bathroom door across the hall open, then the distinct sound of the medicine cabinet clicking open, the rattle of pill bottles. A sigh, deep and satisfied. The faucet turned on, then off. He was just going about his business in my house. He's in the bathroom, I whimpered into the phone. Stay with me, sir. 2 minutes out. The footsteps came back into the hall. They stopped outside my door again. The doorknob, an old glass globe, began to turn, slowly, silently. It stopped. Then it turned back. He was just checking, seeing if it would open. My lungs were burning. I realized I'd stopped breathing.
He moved away. His footsteps descended the stairs.
I heard the front door open. A rush of cool night air whispered up to me. Then it closed. Not a slam, a quiet, considerate click. "He left," I gasped. "He just walked out the front door." "Do not go downstairs, sir. Wait for the officers to clear the house. They are pulling onto your street now." I heard the sirens and saw the pulsing red and blue light paint my walls. Relief, sick and dizzying, flooded me. I ran to the window, saw the cruisers, and bolted downstairs, flinging the front door open. The cold air was the sweetest thing I'd ever tasted. 2 officers approached, hands on their belts. I babbled the story, the step, the kitchen, the shadow, the smell. One officer stayed with me on the porch while the other went inside, gun drawn, flashlight cutting the dark. After a few minutes, the officer inside called out, "Clear." His voice was strange, tight. He came back to the porch, his face pale in the porch light. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "Sir, you said you live alone?" "Yes." "You need to come with me." He led me inside, to the kitchen. The overhead light was on now, blinding. Everything was in its place. The chair was tucked in, no bowl, no spoon. But the smell was stronger here, underneath the sharp chemical tang of Sarah's old cleaning products. The officer pointed his flashlight at the refrigerator. Taped to the door, with a heart-shaped magnet Sarah had left behind, was a Polaroid photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from outside through my living room window last week as I sat watching TV. I was in my bathrobe, oblivious. Written on the white border below the image was in neat, looping cursive a message. "I so enjoyed our dinner. Thank you for having me over. You're a wonderful host. I'll be back for dessert." My eyes traveled from the photo to the stovetop. There, sitting on a cold burner, was a single, clean, bone-white ceramic plate. And beside it, resting precisely in the center of the counter, was my largest carving knife. It gleamed under the lights, spotless. But the sink told a different story. It was pristine, except for one thing. Lodged in the drain, catching the light, was a small, curved fragment of something white. It wasn't ceramic. I leaned closer, my breath catching. It was a piece of a human tooth. The officer was talking, his voice muffled and far away, asking if I knew anyone who would do this, if I had any enemies. I just stared at that tiny, horrific artifact in my drain. The dispatcher said help was coming, and it had. But as I stood there, the cold realization seeped into me, colder than the night air. He hadn't been in my house to rob me. He hadn't been there to hurt me. Not tonight. He'd been here to set the table. The sound a car makes when it gives up the ghost on a forgotten Forest Service road at midnight is a unique kind of silence. It's not peaceful. It's a void that swallows the familiar hum of the engine, the whisper of the tires, and leaves in its place a ringing, absolute quiet that presses against your eardrums. My Jeep Cherokee shuddered, coughed once, a wet, metallic death rattle, and then went still. The dashboard lights died, plunging me into a darkness so complete I could barely see my own hands on the steering wheel. "No," I whispered to the empty car. "No, no, no." I'd taken the shortcut on a whim, a squiggly line on my GPS that promised to shave 40 minutes off the drive back from my brother's cabin. The asphalt had given way to gravel, the gravel to rutted dirt, and now here I was, stranded in a tunnel of ancient pines somewhere in the vast unlit belly of the state forest. No cell service, no other cars for the last 2 hours. I tried the ignition. It clicked, impotently. I slammed my fists on the wheel, the horn letting out a pathetic, dying bleat that was swallowed by the trees. Panic, cold and slick, began to rise in my gut. I fumbled for my phone. 1 bar, then none. The SOS indicator flickered mockingly. I got out. The air was frigid, smelling of damp earth and pine sap. I popped the hood, though I know nothing about engines. The darkness under it was a solid block. I used my phone's flashlight. A tangle of wires, metal, mystery. I saw a loose cable, reconnected it with numb fingers, tried the ignition again. Nothing. That's when I heard it. A crack deep in the woods to my left, a branch snapping under weight. I froze, the phone's beam trembling across the engine block. An animal. It had to be. A deer. A bear. I stood perfectly still, listening. The forest was listening back. Another crack. Closer. Then a different sound. A soft, rhythmic shh, shh, shh. Like something being dragged through dry undergrowth. It was moving parallel to the road, just inside the tree line, keeping pace with where I stood. I quickly got back in the car, locking the doors. The dome light had died with the engine, so I sat in total blackness. I strained my ears. The dragging sound stopped. For 10 long minutes there was nothing but the faint whistle of wind in the highest branches. Then, a new sound. A faint metallic tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the passenger side of the car, light, almost playful. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Tap, tap, tap. Slowly, I turned my head. Pressed against the fogged glass of the passenger window was a pale, shapeless blur. A hand? I fumbled for my phone, swiped it on, and shined the light. There was nothing there, just my own terrified reflection and the impenetrable dark beyond. I let out a shuddering breath. My nerves were shot. I was hearing things, seeing things. I had to get help. I had to get to a spot with service. I remembered passing a small wooden bridge over a creek about a half-mile back. Maybe the elevation changed there. I couldn't stay in the car. It was a metal coffin. Gripping my phone like a talisman, I opened the door and stepped back into the cold. I started walking back the way I'd come, my shoes crunching loudly on the gravel. Every few steps, I'd stop and listen. I heard only my own heartbeat. I reached the bridge, a narrow span of weathered planks. I stood in the middle, holding my phone high. One bar flickered to life. It was enough. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. It rang and rang. Just as I was about to despair, a connection hissed to life. But there was no voice, just a low, rhythmic sound. Thump, drag, thump, drag, and beneath it, a wet, gurgling breath. "Hello?" I hissed. "911? Can you hear me?" The gurgling intensified. Then a voice, a ruined, bubbling whisper, so close to the receiver it felt like it was in my ear. "Get off the road." The call died. I stared at the phone. A prank. A terrible, sick prank on a compromised emergency line. It had to be. But the voice, the intimacy of that agony. A twig snapped on the road ahead of me, where it curved back into the trees. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the slightly less dark sky. It was tall, misshapen. One shoulder was higher than the other. It held something long and slender at its side. It didn't move towards me. It just stood, blocking my path forward. I turned and ran back towards my car. I didn't look back. I heard no pursuit, only the thunder of my own footfalls and the ragged sawing of my breath. I reached the Jeep, wrenched the door open, and threw myself inside, locking the doors again. I crouched low in the seat, peering over the dashboard. Nothing. The road was empty. Minutes bled into an hour. The cold seeped into my bones. My mind raced. The figure. The call. Were they connected? Was someone out there, hunting me? Or was I, isolated and terrified, constructing a monster from the shadows? Then, headlights. 2 pinpricks of light appearing around the bend ahead. Relief, so potent it was dizzying, washed over me. A car, another person. I scrambled up, hitting the Jeep's useless high beams in a flash of greeting. I got out, waving my arms. "Hey, over here! I'm broken down!" The car slowed as it approached. It was a dark sedan, unmarked. It stopped about 20 feet away, its headlights blinding me. The driver's door opened. A man got out. He was in a dark uniform, but not a police uniform. Forest Service, maybe? His face was in shadow. "Thank God," I called out, walking toward him. "My car died. My phone's barely working. I think there's someone out here in the woods. He took a step forward into the edge of his headlights. He was a big man with a kind, weathered face. He held up a hand. "It's okay, son. You're safe now. We got a call about a stranded motorist." His voice was deep, calm, authoritative. "Why don't you come sit in my vehicle where it's warm? We'll call a tow." The kindness in his voice broke me. I felt the tears of release stinging my eyes. I took another step toward him. "You have no idea how good it is to see you. I made a 911 call, but it was all messed up. There was this sound, and this voice said..." I stopped. The man's smile remained, steady, placid. Behind him, the interior light of his sedan was on, and in the back seat, clearly visible through the window, was a long, dark, lumpy bundle wrapped in thick plastic. One end of it was torn. Protruding from the tear, pale in the dome light, was a human hand. The man saw where I was looking. His smile didn't falter. It just cooled. The kindness in his eyes solidified into something else, something patient and terribly empty. He took another step toward me, his hand moving slowly toward his belt. "The call," I whispered, the truth descending on me like a physical weight. The gurgling voice on the phone hadn't been a victim warning me. It had been his current project, and he'd left the line open as a trap or a joke. He was the one they'd called about, the stranded motorist. I wasn't being rescued. I was being collected. The thing about grief is it has a physical weight. After Clara died, it felt like I was constantly wearing a lead X-ray apron, one that compressed my lungs and made every movement a conscious effort. Our house became a museum of her absence. Her perfume lingered in the bedroom. Her half-read novel sat splayed on the arm of her chair. I existed in a fog, moving from room to room, tending to the ghost of a life. That's why, at first, I thought the sounds were in my head. Grief playing auditory tricks. A faint shuffling from the basement when I knew I hadn't been down there in weeks. The soft, almost melodic clink of glass from the kitchen in the dead of night. I'd dismiss it, pour another drink, and sink back into the numb embrace of my armchair. It changed the night I heard the crying. It was a low, muffled sob, watery and broken. It came from the heating vent in the hallway. I froze, the ice in my scotch glass rattling. My first shameful thought was Clara, a ridiculous, desperate hope that the universe had given her back, if only as a sound. I followed it, creeping down the hall, my heart hammering. The sobbing grew clearer near the door to the basement. It was coming from down there. Not Clara's voice, a younger voice, a child's voice. Panic, sharp and clean, cut through my grief fog. Was someone down there? Had some kid gotten trapped? I threw the basement door open, flicked on the light. The bare bulb illuminated the steep wooden stairs, the concrete floor below cluttered with storage boxes and old furniture. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the damp space. The silence that followed was worse, a listening silence. "Is someone down there? It's okay, you can come out." Nothing. I descended, each step a loud protest. The air was cold and smelled of dust and mildew. I looked around, behind the water heater, in the old coal chute alcove, under the workbench. Nothing. No one. I was losing my mind. Grief had finally snapped the last tether to reality. I was about to go back upstairs when I saw it. On the dusty concrete floor, near the base of the stairs, was a small, perfect footprint. A child's bare foot, damp as if from bathwater, pointing toward the back wall where we'd stacked Clara's things in plastic bins, waiting for a strength I never found to sort through them. A cold dread, different from grief, coiled in my stomach. This was real. Someone was in my house, had been in my house. I ran back upstairs, slammed and locked the basement door. I called 911. The police came. 2 officers, polite, patient. They saw a grieving widower, probably hallucinating. They searched the basement thoroughly, found nothing. No footprints. The one I'd seen had been smudged by my own passage. No signs of entry. They checked the windows, the doors, all secure. "It's a stressful time, sir," the older officer said, his voice gentle. "The mind can play cruel tricks. You might want to consider staying with family for a few days." They left. The house felt emptier than ever.
But the sounds continued. Not every night, but often enough to shatter any peace. A faint giggle from the linen closet. The sound of small feet pattering in the attic above my bedroom. I stopped sleeping. I bought security cameras, installing one in the living room and one in the hallway. I watched the feeds obsessively on my laptop, seeing only empty, static rooms in eerie night vision green. One night, the camera in the hallway caught motion. I snapped the laptop open, my breath catching. The timestamp read 3:18 a.m. The feed showed the hallway, the basement door at the end. The doorknob was slowly, silently turning, back and forth, as if someone on the other side was testing it. It stopped. Then, from the very bottom edge of the frame, a small, pale shape darted across the hall and into the living room. A foot, an ankle. I called the police again, frantic. I showed them the footage. The younger officer squinted at the screen. "Could be a reflection, sir. A mouse even, close to the lens. It distorts." They did another walkthrough. Nothing. Their patience was wearing thin. I saw it in their eyes. The crazy, lonely widower. The breaking point came last night. I was in the kitchen, making tea I wouldn't drink, when I heard it, from the living room, clear as a bell. A child's voice singing a nursery rhyme. "Ashes, ashes, we all fall down." It was coming from the old rotary dial telephone on the side table, the phone that had been Clara's grandmother's. A dead line, disconnected for years. I walked over, my legs weak. The singing stopped. I picked up the heavy receiver. I heard breathing on the other end, shallow, childlike breaths. Then, a tiny whispered voice. "Daddy, I'm in the dark. It's cold." It was the voice of a little girl. My blood turned to ice. I had no children. Clara and we couldn't. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "You let them take me," the voice whispered, now laced with a terrible, aching sadness. A sob echoed down the line. Then, a dial tone. I dropped the receiver. This was beyond an intruder. This was a haunting, but not Clara, by something else, something that had latched on to my grief, mimicking a child, using this house. I needed proof, undeniable proof. I grabbed a flashlight and my heaviest wrench. I was going to tear the basement apart, board by board. I threw the basement door open, didn't bother with the light, just charged down with my flashlight beam jerking wildly. I went straight for the back wall, for Clara's bins. I started throwing them aside, plastic cracking, her old clothes and books spilling out. I was screaming, a raw, wordless sound of rage and terror.
My flashlight beam hit the foundation wall behind the stacks. The concrete was old, cracked, and in one section, near the floor, it looked different, smoother. I knelt, running my hands over it. It wasn't concrete. It was a patch, a professional, seamless patch, painted to match, but newer than the rest. You didn't look for me. With a strength born of sheer frenzy, I swung the wrench. The patch material gave way with a dry crack. I ripped it away. Behind it was a small, dark space. A crawl space or something else. The smell that billowed out was familiar. It was the smell from the first night I heard the crying. Damp earth, mildew, and something else, sweet and rotten. I pointed the flashlight into the hole. Inside, the space was about the size of a small closet. The floor was bare earth, and in the center, arranged neatly on a small moldering blanket, was a collection of objects. A chewed-looking teddy bear, a few tarnished hair clips, a small empty juice box, and a stack of Polaroid photographs, faded with time. My hand trembling, I reached in and pulled out the top photo. It was a picture of my house, taken from the street, from years ago based on the car parked out front. The photo beneath it was of the backyard, then one of the living room window. The next one made my heart stop. It was a picture of Clara. She was gardening in the backyard, wearing her big sun hat, her back to the camera. She was alive. The final photo was of a little girl I didn't recognize. She was sitting on what looked like this basement floor, her knees drawn to her chest. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was staring into the corner, her face blank with a terror so profound it seemed to have erased her. Scrawled on the border were the words, "My new friend. She cries less now." I heard a soft thump upstairs, then the distinct, heavy sound of the front door closing. I sat there in the damp dark, the photos scattered around me, the truth crashing down with the weight of a collapsing star. The sounds, the crying, the voice on the phone, they weren't a haunting. They were a memory, an echo trapped in the bones of this house. The previous owner, a quiet grandfatherly man who'd sold us the house in a hurry 15 years ago. He'd said he was moving to be closer to his family. We'd been so young, so in love, so focused on our future. We never asked about the past. We never looked behind the walls. I had spent weeks haunted by a ghost, but the real horror wasn't a presence. It was an absence, a silence that lasted for years right under our feet, while we painted the walls and planted roses and built a life. The terrible, devastating discovery wasn't of something that had come into my house. It was of something that had never left.
If you liked the story, subscribe and like it, and also write a comment about what topic you would like to hear about.